So on October the 14th, my novel Common is being published by Goldsmiths Press, and I thought I'd just do a short video where I read a section from it. It tells the story of the narrator Robert travelling from Manchester to where he grew up in Hampshire to sort through the affairs of his deceased aunt. But that's a role that Robert very quickly abandons, deciding instead to build a ramshackle hut on the nearby area of common land. And the narrative is about the 7 days that Robert spends on the heath, and his attempts to come to terms with aspects of his childhood, particularly sort of the impact of his father's alcoholism, but also the state of his marriage, his career, um, his ability to be a parent, his white male privilege, and possibly most particularly his relationship with his aunt, who was this kind of formidable character who had this huge influence on Robert, but whom over the years he sort of feels that he repeatedly disappointed and let down and most likely misunderstood. And much of the narrative is about Robert not knowing what he's doing, or even really why he's doing it. And so this is a little scene from sort of 2/3 of the way through Robert's week on the common, where he goes for a walk at night, and he tries to sort of work out why he's there, what he's doing, and what might come from it. At nightfall, I made a flask of tea and put it, along with several slices of rye bread, into my backpack. I walked off into the undergrowth, torch in hand. The spikes of the gorse were sharp through my jacket and trousers. At some point, I stumbled on something, a root or clump of knotted grass. Possibly just the clumsiness of my own feet in the growing dark, I'm not sure. I fell. Head over heels, quite literally, I slid and rolled down an unexpectedly steep incline, until what seemed like a long time later, I finally came to rest on the edge of a small cluster of low-lying bracken. My clothes were wet and heavy, my jacket covered in whatever pericarps lay on the ground. My elbow and chin hurt. My left trouser leg was torn at the knee. I swore, repeatedly, at the top of my voice, a great tirade of expletives bellowing forth from my tongue and out over the pencil-lead expanse of the common. It was a form of primal therapy into which I abandoned myself. To express discomfort is a disservice to ambition, Neil liked to say. Having brushed myself down, I wandered to the far side of the common, where it was woodier and darker. Near to the bottom of one of the various valleys, surrounded by dense undergrowth, I came to a small thicket. Within it, a shallow, finger-thin stream bristled. I sat down, the wet leaves squelching underneath me. I reached into my backpack for the bread and tea. I had come to the common because my aunt had died, and because I wanted to remember her in some way. More obliquely, I'd come because I was overwhelmed by a sense of time passing. I had wanted, I think, to pause or to retract its passage, to find my way back to a moment in which it appeared to me I'd somehow come unstuck, at least to an extent. Not all these desires were compatible. I did understand that. The common was shot through with all that I'd propelled into it, the descending mist like a kind of moving screen for the words and faces I could neither embrace nor relinquish. I climbed the short hill in front of me and looked back over the way I'd come, noticing little but murky shades of black and grey. The sky swelled with looping clouds. I thought of Stieglitz, half wondering if he'd taken any photos at night and how he might have done it, although I was more preoccupied with that sense of dislocation to which my aunt had been drawn, the absence of ground, the gaps and fissures, that sense of being unmoored, and of mutability, as if, oddly enough, the frozen instant of each photograph was actually little more than a record of movement and exchange impossible to capture. Everything would be all right, my aunt had told me on various occasions, quoting a letter from Kierkegaard to his niece Henrietta, if we only kept walking. Deciding to take this advice to heart, once I'd eaten the last of the rye bread, I walked back in the direction of the hut through a crust of pine trees. The path rose and fell until it opened out onto the sandy expanse, mildewed and silver and opaque.